The 7th January 6th public hearings led by the January 6th Select Committee happened, and we went over in a previous segment most of the highlights of that. But I wanted to do a whole separate segment on just one part of it that they talked about, which was an insane meeting that took place in the White House before January 6th between the reasonable-ish Trump allies and the super wacky Trump allies. So I honestly can't break this meeting down better for you than the January 6 hearings did. So for this story, we're just going to play the compilation that they played. I took some things out of it to try to shorten it a little bit, but they depicted it perfectly with testimony from all these different people kind of smushing together to tell this wild story of how a very heated confrontation happened when the wacko Trump allies snuck in pretty much to the White House. I mean, they got the ability to go in, but tried to keep it off the record so that the less wacky Trump staff members wouldn't find out about it and wouldn't stop Trump from listening to the ideas these people had. Of course, I'm referring to Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell, and all of those wacky people you're aware of. So again, I'll just be reacting to this wild compilation they put together that describes one of the most insane stories we've heard out of these hearings. Let's take a look.
So let's return to that meeting at the White House on the evening of December 18. That night, a group showed up at the White House, including Sidney Powell, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and former Overstock.com CEO Patrick Byrne. After gaining access to the building from a junior White House staffer, the group made their way to the Oval Office. They were able to speak with the president.
So again, they're trying to get into the White House and talk to the president without the rest of the White House staff finding out, because they know, and again, I use the word reasonable because they're not reasonable people generally, the Trump staff members, but compared to the Sidney Powells and the Michael Flynns, they're a little bit more reasonable. And so Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and the Overstock CEO or whatever realized if the staff found out about this, they wouldn't allow this meeting to happen, or they would come in and intervene and give the actual facts of the situation to Trump instead of just allowing us to spew our lies.
By himself for some time until White House officials learned of the meeting. What ensued was a heated and profane clash between this group and President Trump's White House advisors, who traded personal insults, accusations of disloyalty to the president, and even challenges to physically fight. The meeting was...
Guys, what is happening? Picture Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and the Overstock CEO screaming at other Trump staff members, including Pat Cipollone, and going, "You want to fight?" That's crazy.
Last over 6 hours, beginning here in the Oval Office. Moving around the
for 6 hours, debating whether or not we should overthrow democracy.
West Wing, and many hours later, ending up in the president's private residence. The Select Committee has spoken with 6 of the participants, as well as staffers who could hear the screaming from outside the Oval Office. What took place next is best told in their own words, as you will see from this video.
Did you believe that it was going to work, that you were going to be able to get to see the president without...
Guys, they're interviewing Sidney Powell. She is so Looney Tunes.
Without an appointment?
I had no idea.
In fact, you did get to see the president without an appointment.
We did.
How much time did you have alone with the president? And I say alone.
So usually, if you want to meet with the president of the United States, you have to go through his staff, you have to get an appointment. So they're asking, did you expect to meet with him even without an appointment? Because that's what ended up happening.
You had other people with you, but
right
from his aides before the crowd came running.
Probably no more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Was in that...
I bet Pat Cipollone set a new land speed record.
I got a call.
So Mike Flynn, and that other dude went to the White House, met with Trump, trying to give him all these theories before the staff found out about the meeting. Within 10 to 15 minutes, they found out and tried to intervene.
Either from Molly or Cushman, that I need to get to the Oval Office.
So that was the first point that I had recognized. Okay, there was nobody in there from the White House. Mark's gone. What's going on right now?
I opened the door and I walked in. I saw General Flynn. I saw Sidney Powell sitting there. I was not happy to see the people in the Oval Office.
Explain why.
Well, again, I don't think they were providing. Well, first of all, the Overstock person, I've never knew who this guy was.
So Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, who actually works for Trump, walks in and sees all these people who aren't even members of the White House staff meeting with Trump, and he knows why they're there, to give Trump false theories for why he should overthrow democracy. And so Pat Cipollone is upset, and he doesn't even know who one of the people is who's sitting there.
Actually, the first thing I did, I walked in, I looked at him, and I said, "Who are you?" And he told me. I don't think any of these people were providing the president with good advice. And so I didn't understand how they had gotten in.
In the short period of time that you had with the president, did he seem receptive to the presentation that you were making?
He was very interested in hearing particularly about the system.
Okay, for our podcast listeners, Sidney Powell's responding to this question. She's holding up a Dr. Pepper like next to her face as if she's going to finish her sentence and then take a drink of it. And you'll see when it goes silent for our podcast listeners, just picture her taking a big gulp of her Dr. Pepper, because that's what happens. It's so awkward.
The finding and the terms of 13848 that apparently nobody else had bothered to inform him of.
What is
I was
happening?
asking, like, you claiming the Democrats were working with Hugo Chavez, Venezuelans, and whomever else. And at one point, General Flynn took out...
To be clear, the theory was not that they were working with Hugo Chavez. It was that they were using fraudulent election systems that Hugo Chavez developed back when he was alive. To be fair to the conspiracy theorists, that was their actual conspiracy. It wasn't that Hugo Chavez was alive or something.
a diagram that supposedly showed IP addresses all over the world, and ISP who was communicating with whom via the machines, and some comment about like Nest thermostats being hooked up to the internet.
So it's been reported that during this meeting, Powell talked about Dominion voting machines and made various election fraud claims that involve foreign countries.
So for our podcast listeners, they're now talking to Mike Flynn, and he's just going to plead the fifth after they ask this question.
Such as Venezuela, Iran, and China. Is that accurate?
Fifth.
Do you recall whether he raised to Ms. Powell the fact that she and the campaign had lost all of the 60 cases that they had brought in litigation?
Yes, he raised that.
And what was the response?
I don't remember what she said.
So then Pat Cipollone is asked, was it brought up that they had lost 60 court cases? And he says it was brought up, but then, as he'll describe here, they just kind of jibber-jabbered around answering that question.
I don't think it was a good response.
Cipollone and Hirschman and whoever the other guy was showed nothing but contempt and disdain of the president.
Yeah, I remember the three of them were really sort of forcefully attacking me verbally. Derek, and we were pushing back, and we were asking one simple question as a general matter. Where is the evidence?
Pat Cipollone and the other, again, somewhat more reasonable Trump staffers were asking the wackos, Mike Flynn, the Overstock CEO dude, and Sidney Powell, we have one question for you. Where's the evidence?
So,
what response did you get when you asked Ms. Powell and her colleagues, where's the
a variety of responses based on my current recollection, including, can't believe you would say something like, things like this, like, what do you mean, where's the evidence? You should know, and things like that, or, a disregard, I would say, a general disregard for the importance of actually backing up what you say with facts.
So that's a classic technique. When you don't have evidence, you then just directly question the person right on back. So if they say, okay, you're making wild claims, where's the evidence? You go, how dare you ask me that? How could you not see all the evidence already? How could you question that Trump would have ever lost this question that he won the election? And you directly just question their loyalty and their own knowledge of the situation instead of answering the question of why you haven't provided any evidence.
And, then there was discussion of, we don't have it now, but we will have it or whatever.
That's another one. We don't have the evidence now, but we got it. We just haven't, brought it yet and showed it to you.
I mean, if it had been me sitting in his chair, I
So I know y'all probably know this, but podcast listeners, that's the voice of Sidney Powell every time it cuts to that.
would have fired all of them that night and had them escorted out of the building.
Derek and I both challenged what she was saying, And she says, well, the judges are corrupt. And I was like, everyone? Every single case that you've done in the country you guys lost, every one of them is corrupt, even the ones we appointed? And I'm being nice. I was much more harsh to her. I think that
the question we've all been asking. All right, you keep saying that you have this evidence and the election was stolen. So why didn't any judges rule in your favor if you had all that evidence? And her response is they're all corrupt. And he goes, every single one, even the ones that Trump appointed, that our administration appointed. And it's like, yeah, sure, if that fits into our narrative.
it got to the point where the screaming was completely out there. I mean, you get people walk in, it was late at night, it had been a long day, and what they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
I'm gonna categorically
Now it's Rudy Giuliani reflecting on this night.
describe it as, you guys are not tough enough. Or maybe I put it another way, you're a bunch of pussies.
So instead of answering for why they don't have evidence, Rudy just says, you're a bunch of P words. Like, really?
Excuse the expression, but I'm almost certain the word was used.
Flynn screamed at me that I was a quitter and everything, kept on standing up and turning around and screaming at me.
Again, it's classic. If someone says, listen, we're on your team, but do you have any evidence for the claims that you're making? Because if not, we can't support this. And instead of answering that question directly, you just go, you're a quitter. You're not loyal enough to the president. You must hate the president. You're a little P word, all those things. You're weak. And that's how you respond instead of giving an honest answer.
And at a certain point, I had it with him. So I yelled back. Either come over or sit your effing ass back down.
So he yells at one of the wackos, I've had it with you. Either come over here or sit your butt down. That's fighting words right there. They're about to get in a physical confrontation, baby.
The president and the White House team went upstairs.
Okay, side note, Rudy, clear your throat or get a drink of water or something. The president and the White.
To the residence, but to the public part of the residence, the big parlor where you can have meetings in the conference room.
Oval. They call that the yellow oval?
Yes, exactly. The yellow Oval Office. I always called it the upper. And I'm not exactly sure where the Sydney group went. I think maybe the Roosevelt room. And I stayed in the cabinet room, which is kind of cool. I really like that. All by myself.
So, guys, Rudy Giuliani's response to, hey, you remember that meeting where you were on the side of overthrowing democracy and overturning a free and fair election? What is your memory of that wild meeting? And he's like, I was calling people P words, and then it was cool because we went to the White House residence and I got to stay in my own room. It was such a fun slumber party. Like, really? That's how you're going to respond to this? And also, why is Trump having these people over for a sleepover? That's crazy. Hey guys, I'm getting tired. Let's keep working on our plot to overturn the election results in the morning. We can do it over coffee. Like, wow. So that was one of the most movie-like, wild, comedic skit-like stories about what was going on in the lead up to January 6th and the efforts by the wackos within Trump's administration, the maximum wackos who were trying to convince Trump to stick with his lies and attempt to overthrow our democratic process.